In the Devil's Advocate movie, the devil's name is John Milton, an allusion to the 17th century poet. Why would they name the devil John Milton? The first reason is because John Milton was a bard. I talk about bards all the time because a bard is a storyteller, a verse maker, music composer, oral historian, and genealogist employed by an elite to commemorate their ancestors and/or their polytheist religion. Because the pen is mightier than the sword, and that job is very important to the enemy. John Milton is regarded as one of the greatest poets in English literature, second only to Shakespeare. The second reason the devil would be named John Milton in the movie is because of his influence on the Enlightenment period. Milton's most famous poem was Paradise Lost, which explored free will and promoted humanism to fulfill divine purpose through reason, liberty, and moral choice, making Milton a pivotal figure in the transition from Renaissance humanism to Enlightenment ideals. Milton attended Christ Church College at Oxford. Only aristocratic bloodliners attended Oxford in Milton's time during the 1600s, so that alone means he was in the club. Christ Church, Oxford inspired the dining hall at Hogwarts in the Harry Potter movies. The hog is the heraldic symbol denoting Druidry, which is Anglicanism. While at Oxford, Milton was preparing to become an Anglican priest, which means he was mentored and received all the training to become an Anglican Druidic priest. But it says he was opposed to the leadership structure and didn't pursue the priesthood, or maybe they just had other plans for him, which is more likely the case. Milton spoke and wrote Latin, Greek, Hebrew, French, Spanish, Italian, English, Old English, Dutch, Aramaic, and Syriac. How did he learn all those languages? Was he channeling something? Milton was also polemic, which is someone involved in rhetoric, specifically religious and political rhetoric. And rhetoric is one of the 7 sacred sciences. It's called twisting the truth and is used even by modern politicians. Milton's father was a composer and also a bard, and therefore John Milton was also involved in music. He was close friends with William and Henry Lawes, who were court-appointed musicians to Charles I, Prince of Wales, during the 1600s. William Lawes was the musician vampire in the occult movie Only Lovers Left Alive, so the vampire was a bard. Kit Marlowe played another vampire in that movie. Kit Marlowe is also a historical poet, playwright, and bard. Kit Harington is named for Kit Marlowe. Kit Harington, the actor Jon Snow from Game of Thrones. John Milton was also affiliated with scientific figures of the time such as Galileo and political figures such as Oliver Cromwell. I'm going to play a clip from the movie The Devil's Advocate, which sums up the devil's perspective, which is linked to the themes of humanism and the Enlightenment transformative period, of which John Milton was very influential.
Let me give you a little inside information about God. God likes to watch. He's a prankster. Think about it. He gives man instincts. He gives you this extraordinary gift, and then what does he do? I swear, for his own amusement, his own private cosmic gag reel, he sets the rules in opposition. It's the goof of all time. Look, but don't touch. Touch, but don't taste. Taste, don't swallow. And while you're jumping from one foot to the next, what is he doing? He's laughing his sick fucking ass off. He's a tight ass. He's a sadist. He's an absentee landlord. Worship that? Never.
Better to reign in hell than serve in heaven, is that it?
Why not? I'm here on the ground with my nose in it since the whole thing began. I've nurtured every sensation man has been inspired to have. I cared about what he wanted, and I never judged him. Why? Because I never rejected him. In spite of all his imperfections, I'm a fan of man. I'm a humanist.
He's a humanist. Watch what this harlot does that he's trying to set Kevin up with.
Maybe the last humanist. Who,
She thinks that's hilarious.
in their right mind, Kevin, could possibly deny the 20th century was entirely mine? All of it, Kevin! All of it. Mine. I'm peeking, Kevin.
So he said, better to reign in hell than serve in heaven. And that is from Paradise Lost, in which the devil is seen as a complex, sympathetic character. Milton uses poetic license to interject his own theology to the Garden of Eden account. William Blake wrote, the reason Milton wrote in fetters when he wrote of angels and God, and at liberty when of devils and hell, is because he was a true poet and of the devil's party without even knowing it. Blake was involved in mystical and luminist groups which overlapped with Freemasonry and incorporated Masonic symbols into his writings and paintings. Milton highlights the Enlightenment concept of free will when he says, I'm no puppeteer. I don't make things happen. I only set the stage. It's free will. Milton says that Kevin's argument in the health code case put popes, swamis, and snake handlers all feeding at the same trough, highlighting the Enlightenment ideal of freedom of religion. He says he's a humanist. John Milton was the most significant figure in humanism, promoting human reason, individual liberty, freedom of speech, rejecting traditional authority. Humanism emphasizes the creation of a more just world through human capabilities in science and art without reliance on divine authority. These ideas made Milton an influential figure for the Enlightenment thinkers of the 1700s during the Age of Reason. The Enlightenment taught that reason and the scientific method should replace all faith and tradition. So these people play the long game. The Enlightenment was a transformative period leading to the American and French Revolutions, the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. There's a strong connection between Freemasonry and humanism, and the Enlightenment with all shared ideals like reason, progress, liberty, and human perfectibility. Masonic principles influenced Enlightenment values and vice versa. After this scene, the harlot goes and gets candles and is preparing for a ritual in which they're supposed to get together and produce the Antichrist. Later, Kevin asks Milton, why the law? And Milton says, the law puts them into everything. It's the ultimate backstage pass. It's the new priesthood. The theme of the movie is obviously centered around the law, with Kevin being the devil's advocate and Milton being the head of a law firm in Manhattan, although they are extremely corrupt. It says here that the Enlightenment laid the groundwork for the rule of law. The rule of law is a phrase we hear in our politicians. They parrot it all the time. But the rule of law was not a phrase that originated with the Enlightenment. The phrase the rule of law originated with the Babylonian king Hammurabi and the Code of Hammurabi. I previously made a video regarding the rule of law and the Code of Hammurabi, which explains the Babylonian king Hammurabi is the foundation of modern law. The Babylonian king Hammurabi is featured in U.S. courtrooms. The Code of Hammurabi still sits at the top of maritime law. This also plays into the law themes in the movie The Devil's Advocate, including maritime law. Those laws are written in cuneiform and could not be read or understood by the commoners, but those commoners were still held to them, so nothing has really changed. But the point is that the phrase the rule of law originated with Babylon, the Babylonian king Hammurabi, who is venerated in our government buildings, and this Code of Hammurabi sits at the top of maritime laws. Now I'll play a prior video that I did about the movie The Devil's Advocate, which shows the connections in the movie to maritime law, John Milton, Paradise Lost, and witchcraft. I made that video back when people were saying that the movie could have been predictive programming for Hurricane Milton, which was likely caused by weather warfare, which the Royal Navy, Merchant Navy are heavily involved in.
So now let's look at maritime law, because maritime law would be the law that would have jurisdiction over this type of vessel. Maritime law is law that governs nautical issues and maritime disputes. Domestic law on maritime activities and private international law governing the relationships between private parties operating or using ocean-going vessels. It's distinguished from the law of the sea, which is a body of public international law dealing with navigational rights, mineral rights, jurisdiction over coastal waters, and the maritime relationships between nations. The UN law of the sea has been adopted by 167 countries in the EU. So, Serco is supposedly a privately owned company, but they also operate ships. We saw that in my last video. They provide that to the government, but they're supposedly a private company. But of course, it's Crown Corporation. We talked about that before. But regarding hurricanes, and specifically Hurricane Milton, the one that was advertised so much recently, people have suggested there's a correlation between Milton, the hurricane, and John Milton, the British poet who wrote the poem Paradise Lost, and John Milton in the movie The Devil's Advocate. So John Milton was the name given to Satan's character, played by Al Pacino in the movie. The name John Milton is one of several allusions to Paradise Lost in the movie, as well as Dante's Inferno and The Legend of Faust. So Al Pacino plays a very convincing Satan, Milton. He's the owner of a Manhattan law firm who is into everything: money laundering, arms dealing, drug running, and murder, and maritime law. So that movie may be predictive programming for Hurricane Milton. It's definitely a significant movie because of the Trump references, which I'm not going to go over because most people are already aware of those. But there are potential references to where Hurricane Milton made landfall in maritime law. So the first reference is Tampa, or St. Petersburg, which is right off the coast of Tampa. It's right there in the bay. So on Milton's, aka Satan's, desk in his office is a statuette, and this is it. It's called The Doctor. It's from a series of statuettes and paintings called Carnival at St. Petersburg. That's the name of the art series, Carnival at St. Petersburg. And the statuette is the only thing to note in a sparse desk in an otherwise empty stone wall round room. That's Milton's or Satan's office. And they zoom in on this statue and they leave the camera shot on it for an inordinately long amount of time for focus. So anytime they focus on something like that, you know for sure that it's done intentionally and it has significant symbolic meaning. So the Russian sculptor of this statuette is Mihail Chemakin, and he is Order of the Red Banner. So he's in the club. And this is where St. Petersburg is, you see. This is Tampa, and this is the bay, and this is where the hurricane came in, right there. So there's a carnival in St. Petersburg in Russia, but there's also a carnival in St. Petersburg, Florida, which is essentially right here in Tampa. See, right here, St. Petersburg. And I'll just show you some other of the, this is the carnival in Tampa. So there's a carnival in St. Petersburg, but there's also this one in Tampa. It's a famous carnival. Maybe modeled after the one in St. Petersburg, Russia. This is just some of the other surrealist art done by the same Russian artist in the series, Carnival at St. Petersburg. And you can see they have like imperial type characters, but they're demonic, and these are like the the statuettes that are part of it. But Keanu Reeves plays Kevin, who is the aspiring lawyer and bastard son of Milton, aka Satan, and he's also from Gainesville, Florida, which is north of Orlando, so also in the path of the hurricane. But the second reference is maritime law. This is a quote from Satan, aka Milton. He says, "The law puts us into everything. It's the new priesthood." The law puts us into everything. It's the new priesthood. It's an old priesthood too. But anyway, the name of Milton, aka Satan's law firm, is Milton, Chadwick, and Waters. Milton is obviously named after Milton, and Chadwick is definitely a reference to London, which is where John Milton, the poet, was born, and where a lot of this stuff is born out of. But Waters, though, what's that about? Well, I can't help but think about maritime law, and I've been thinking about it a lot lately with the NOAA and the Merchant Navy research that I've been doing, and especially with that patent, which would definitely fall under the jurisdiction of maritime law. One of the head attorneys in Milton, Chadwick, and Waters is head of maritime law for the firm, and they make a pertinent point to call him out as head of maritime law. Additionally, Kevin, the aspiring lawyer who's having a crisis of conscience, is the son of Milton/Satan in his daylight hallucination. He wins a case in Florida before he moves to Manhattan in his hallucination. And to celebrate the Florida case, he goes to this bar to celebrate. And this is where he's approached to come work for Milton, Chadwick, and Waters. And the bar is decked all out in ropes, like a ship. And I know it's Florida, but there are tons of ropes in this place. They're everywhere. Seems intentional and overkill, and I doubt this is literally in the bar where they filmed this, because that would be dangerous, I would think. So, in the movie, Milton/Satan says that he builds egos the size of cathedrals. Cathedrals are Gothic architecture, and there's a lot of Gothic architecture in the movie. The author of the book that the movie was adapted from is an author of Gothic fiction. And Gothic cathedrals and architecture is not exactly a hurricane reference, but it sort of is, because Gothic architecture is dragon, court, knights, templar, vampire architecture, and they are the ones at the tip-top of the chain, including making sure that these storms are created and steered in the right direction, if you read Gary Wayne regarding who's running everything at the top. So I want to talk about all the Gothic architecture in this movie. The courthouse is the municipal building, and it's got Gothic architecture. You see these archways here. Very Gothic styled, that building, with fallen angel statue at the top, which they highlight at the very beginning of the movie. And there are Gothic churches in the movie as well. Church of Heavenly Rest and the Holy Redeemer Church, which is the one that was used for the holy water boiling scene at the funeral. Carnegie Hill is where all the partners of the law firm live, including Milton, aka Satan, and the architecture of the neighborhood is Gothic styled. It's named after Andrew Carnegie, who had a mansion there, Carnegie of steel industry fame, and Trump has an association with the Carnegies. I think his mother said she worked for them when she came to America from Scotland. That's the claim. So, Milton's apartment is the penthouse in Carnegie Hill, in the building they live in. And in the middle of the floor of his penthouse is a sacred geometry tile inlay. And this is it right here at the bottom. Looks like a rose window. He also has the Masonic black and white chest floor and things on the wall that look like coffins, which you can't really see here. But the sculpture, the large sculpture here on the wall, is supposed to be a replica of Ex Nihilo, which was sculpted by Frederick Hart in the Washington National Cathedral, which is a Gothic-styled cathedral in Washington, D.C. This one. So, this is not a reference to Hurricane Milton and maritime law, but I want to mention the inclusion of African witchcraft in this movie. Kevin's first Manhattan case with the firm, which at first he's led to believe is just a health code case or a test, but as it turns out, the defendant is very significant, Philippe Moyes, and Philippe is a wealthy African witch, but he has a French accent, and he's doing animal sacrifice underground in Manhattan, and he calls this spiritual currency. Apparently, African witches are powerful in real life, especially if they're born into a powerful tribe. And in the movie, Philippe does some sort of ritual with a tongue, like a cow tongue or something like that, against the DA who's prosecuting, saying, "With this tongue we create silence." And during the trial, the DA gets all choked up, so the witchcraft worked, and Philippe got off. And during the trial, Reeves argues religious constitutional rights, which I think is a foreshadowing of how things will go here in the future. Like all the satanic religions have rights, but not those who follow Jesus.
Okay, so African witchcraft is highlighted. Hoodoo, which is French Acadian mixed with voodoo. There's actually a lot of witchcraft in this movie. Milton's office is round, a circle made of stones, and circles are used in witchcraft to harness energy from spirits to cast spells. We see this as far back as pre-flood stone circles, which are mainly found in the Celtic regions of the British Isles, Scotland, England, Ireland, and Wales, and Brittany and France. The Celts originated it, and it evolved from pre-flood Proto-Indo-European tribes and later spread across Europe, particularly in Ireland, Britain, Scotland, and parts of France. Modern Celtic nations are Ireland, Scotland, Wales, Cornwall, Brittany, and the Isle of Man. 75% of U.S. presidents have UK ancestry: Britain, Wales, Ireland, Scotland, so Celtic. The architect who crafted the astronomical clock at the Hoover Dam Monument said, "The Celtic Church will rise again." Tilda Swinton is the sorcerer in Doctor Strange, referred to as the Ancient One, and her character is Celtic. I'm going to play this clip.
The language of the mystic arts is as old as civilization. The sorcerers of antiquity called the use of this language spells. But if that word offends your modern sensibilities, you can call it a program. We harness energy drawn from other dimensions of the multiverse to cast spells, to conjure shields and weapons, to make magic.
So, in real life, Tilda Swinton is actually Celtic from the ancient Scottish clan Swinton, a bloodliner from a long line of bards. She's also in the Only Lovers Left Alive vampire movie, and her character, Mary Shelley, in that movie is also a bard. She wears her clan colors in that movie. In Doctor Who, she said, "Language of the mystic art is as old as civilization. The sorcerers of antiquity call the use of the language spells, but if that word offends your modern sensibilities, you can call it a program, source code that shapes reality. We harness energy from other dimensions to cast spells, to conjure shields and weapons, and make magic, otherwise known as witchcraft." We said that bards can also be music composers. For example, Led Zeppelin, whose music prominently featured Celtic themes and mythology lyrics from Welsh, Irish, and Norse lore, along with the instrumentation as well. On the roof of the office building is an infinity pool with an arrow pointing towards the city of Manhattan. Water is used in witchcraft to harness energy for divination and spells also. The arrow represents energy and intention towards Manhattan. Milton mentions that there are a lot of potential clients down there. Milton also uses a water spell in a Gothic church by sticking his hand in holy water as a harming spell, which kills a reporter who is trying to expose the criminal activity of the law firm Milton, Chadwick, and Waters. Now I'm going to play a scene where Milton blows into his hand and then releases it at the point that Kevin is talking about his conscience as he's interviewing for the position with Milton, Chadwick, and Waters' corrupt law firm.
What's your secret?
I couldn't say.
You were a prosecutor.
Out of law school. 5 years in the Jacksonville DA's office.
64 straight convictions. What a number!
I like to be in court. I didn't plea outlaw.
What's that like? One day you're putting them away, next day you're setting them free.
Takes a little getting used to.
Pays better though, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
That math teacher, the Geddes case. Now I hear you were brilliant.
Prosecutor dropped the ball.
Really? So you think your guy was guilty?
I didn't say that.
What'd you say?
How's this? I began the case with a clear conscience.
Right there. So in witchcraft and spell work, this is called blowing an intention, and it's done to manifest energy using personal power to focus the practitioner's intention. So Milton, aka the devil, is a Nahash, a sorcerer, just like it says in the Bible. John Milton is the historical bard, and he uses language. The language of the mystic art is as old as civilization, just like Tilda Swinton said. The sorcerers of antiquity call the use of language spells. To further explain why the devil might have been named as John Milton, aside from the humanist and Enlightenment ideals he poetically promoted, I will review another one of John Milton's plays, which is obviously pagan, even though Milton is regarded by some as a Christian poet. I'll just go ahead and say any famous poet is not going to be Christian based on my research. Their words are witchcraft, so let's look at this pagan play written by Milton, John Milton. This is the cover. It's called Comus. You see the pan creature on the cover? Along with the boar and the hog and the goat. Comus is a play called a masque, and those were performed for the royal court. It was first performed in 1634 for John Egerton at Ludlow Castle in Shropshire to celebrate his post as Lord President of Wales, but it's still performed today. Here's an image of it being performed in 1953 at the ruins of Ludlow Castle in Shropshire. The plot is about a lady captured by Comus, a character from Greek mythology who brings her to his pleasure palace after capturing her in the woods. He uses necromancy to summon dead spirits and perform divination and urges her to drink from his magical cup representing sexual pleasure, but she resists. She is eventually rescued by a spirit and a water nymph. This is not Christian, it's 100% pagan. Thanks for listening.